Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
I'm Jason Miller. Tonight on the Evan-Miller Report, President Obama has said Islamic State militants will lose, but Congress is thinking differently when it comes to military force. We have the latest on that tonight. Also tonight, the number of new cases of Ebola has risen in all of West Africa. We'll tell you where in Africa that Ebola continues to be a threat. Leaders of Ukraine, Russia, France, and Germany start talks on the Ukrainian crisis. This as the U.S. Army is to start training Ukrainian troops. Oil is down after a record U.S. crude stocks are down below $55. We have the latest in that in business. In U.S. news tonight, Governor Bruce Rayner has stepped up his campaign against government employee unions. And the CBS 8's Kyle Kraska is doing better after surgery, and the man who shot him has been arrested. We have all those stories and more on the Evan-Miller Report for this Wednesday, February the 11th, 2015, starting now.
Live from Southern California, this is the Evan-Miller Report. Jason Miller with news and politics, Corey Evan with business and entertainment. This is the Evan-Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio. Here now, Jason Miller.
And a very good evening on this Wednesday, February the 11th, 2015. I'm Jason Miller. Corey Evan, I don't know where he is tonight, did not show up for work tonight, so I will be doing the show solo tonight. Hope he is well tonight. Hopefully he will give me a call after the show to tell me where he is tonight. But first, ladies and gentlemen, we all, of course, as always, start off with the news tonight in the program. A lot to get to, so let's get right to it tonight. President Obama has said Islamic State militants will lose as he asked Congress today to formally authorize military force against them. He said, quote, "Our coalition is on the defensive, and ISIL is going to lose," he said. He warned against dragging the U.S. into another prolonged ground war and called on lawmakers to show a united front. The U.S. has carried out airstrikes against ISIS since last year in a coalition with other nations. It's the first time a U.S. president has sought congressional approval to use military force since George W. Bush back in 2002 ahead of the invasion of Iraq in the Iraq War. In a White House address, he said the draft authorization did not change the mission's core objective to degrade and destroy ISIS. Flanked by Vice President Joe Biden and the U.S. Secretaries of State and Defense at the White House, Mr. Obama said this did not signal an endless war. He said he was convinced that the United States should not get dragged back into another prolonged ground war in the Middle East, but said fighting ISIS would take some time. Backing from Congress would send a powerful message that the U.S. was united in its opposition, he said. Make no mistake, this is a difficult mission, Mr. Obama said, but our coalition is on the offensive. ISIL is on the defensive, and ISIL is going to lose. Wednesday's draft proposal would repeal Mr. Bush's 2002 authorization for use of military force, but will leave in place the 2001 resolution that was approved after the 9/11 terror attacks in order to search for al-Qaeda operatives. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, we'll have much more on this in the days to come as Congress makes the decision whether to give Obama that authorization. Moving on now to the number of new cases of Ebola, which has risen in all of West Africa's worst-hit countries for the second week in a row. This according to the World Health Organization. This is the second weekly increase in confirmed cases in 2015. Ending a series of encouraging declines. That organization said today that Sierra Leone had registered 76 of the 144 new cases, Guinea 65, and Liberia 3. More than 9,000 people have died from Ebola since December of 2013. The World Health Organization said the increase highlights the considerable challenges that must be still overcome to end the outbreak. Despite improvements in case finding and management, brutal practices, and community engagement, the declining case incidence has stalled, the UN Health Agency said in a statement. In another development today, President Obama, in the same speech he was talking about the war authorization with ISIS, said he will withdraw nearly all U.S. troops helping to combat the disease in Liberia. Only 100 of the 2,800 troops would remain in West Africa at the end of April, according to the AP news agency. Mr. Obama said that the withdrawal marked a transition in the fight against the disease in Liberia, but did not mean that the mission was over. Obama said, our focus is now getting to zero. Well, Mr. Obama, I think we are far from that. That's a little presumptuous to say that we're going to get to zero. At least 22,800 cases of Ebola have been recorded since the outbreak began, mainly in the 3 countries of West Africa. Over to Ukraine now, where the leaders of Ukraine, Russia, France, and Germany arrived in the Belarusian capital of Minsk on Wednesday and began talks to try to defuse the 10-month separatist crisis in Ukraine. Belarusian leader Alexei Loshkov greeted Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko and Russians Vladimir Putin separately at Minsk's Orient Independent Palace. He handed a bouquet of flowers to German Chancellor Angela Merkel, whom he welcomed together with French President Francis Hollande. In exchange with UNESCO, a solemn-faced Poroshenko said, quote, either the situation goes down the road of de-escalation ceasefire or the situation goes out of control. The 4 leaders met alone for discussions, a source with the Hollande said, and were due to go into a full summit with their delegations later. Meanwhile, the U.S. military plans in March to start training Ukrainian soldiers who are battling Russian-backed separatists in eastern Ukraine, according to a top U.S. military commander in Europe who spoke today. U.S. Army Europe Commander Lieutenant General Ben Hodges said a battalion of U.S. soldiers would train 3 battalions of Ukrainians from the Interior Ministry at the Yarvuk Training Center in the western Ukrainian city of Lviv. Hodges' remarks came amid an intensification of fighting in eastern Ukraine and, as we stated earlier, the meet of French, German, Ukrainian, and Russian officials in Minsk. The plans for training were made many months ago. Hodges said Americans will teach the Ukrainians how to better defend themselves against Russian and rebel artillery and rockets. Training will also include securing roads, bridges, and other infrastructures, treating and evacuating casualties, and operating in an environment where Russians are jamming communications. Over to Syria, where Syrian troops backed by Lebanese Hezbollah fighters swept south of the capital Damascus today, seizing strategic hills and villages from rebels and local al-Qaeda affiliate near the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. State media and opposition activists said the surprise counteroffensive is aimed at forcing back rebels who had recently advanced closer to embattled President Bashar al-Assad's seat of power. The region is also important because it's located near the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. The area has been tense lately, particularly after a January 18th Israeli airstrike in Qamania on the edge of the Golan that has killed 6 Hezbollah fighters and an Iranian general. The Syrian government last year lost large parts of Quatarnian's province to opposition fighters, many of them from the Nusra Front. State television said troops on Wednesday gained control of the town of Deir el-Adis and the village of Deir Maker, as well as the nearby areas of Tel el-Rus and Tel el-Saria south of the capital. A statement by the Syrian Armed Forces said the successes were important because they severed supply lines and communication between terrorist outposts in the Damascus countryside, the southern Deira province, and Qatar. Police in the Australian city of Sydney have charged 2 men with planning to carry out an imminent attack. The pair, aged 24 and 25, were arrested in a raid in the western suburb of Fairfield yesterday. Details of the alleged plot are not known, but police say a hunting knife, an Islamic State flag, and a video describing an attack were seized. Australia, which has joined the coalition fighting ISIS in Iraq, raised its domestic terror alert last year. The move was a response to growing concern over the impact of militant conflicts in Iraq and Syria. Sydney is also on alert after a siege at a cafe in the city in December of last year, which left 2 hostages and the gunman dead. Ed Miliband has called David Cameron a dodgy prime minister, surrounded by dodgy donors and a row over party grandees with Swiss bank accounts. Mr. Cameron hit back by accusing the previous Labour government of being the friend of the tax dodger. This happened today during Prime Minister's questions. Apologize, ladies and gentlemen. We were trying to bring out a clip of Prime Minister's questions this morning. We're having some difficulty playing that. Hopefully we can get that in the next couple moments here. All right, folks. Sometimes technology don't work with us today. We will get back to that story if we are able to here on the Evan-Miller Report. In the meantime, we're going to go ahead and take a short break. When we come back here on the program tonight, we got the latest business news tonight, including the Eurozone and Greece failed to strike a debt pact today. Also on tonight's program, Governor Bruce Rayner has stepped up his campaign against government employee unions. We'll tell you what he eliminated today in executive action. Also tonight, in Chicago, Little League International has stripped one Little League team of its national title after what you might find interesting. It has to do with coaching players. We'll tell you more. Plus, we have an update on the Channel 8 San Diego's sports director, Kyle Kraska, coming up on the Evan-Miller Report, your conservative news source. And we'll be right back.
You're listening to the Evan-Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio.
Is radio.
News. News. Radio. News. Radio. Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Hi, Hi, this is Rooster from Outcry Radio. Catch me here on Blog Talk Radio every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or follow my blog. Now, back to the Sackheads.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Is radio.
Let's get back to the Evan-Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio.
And welcome back to the Evan-Miller Report. I'm Jason Miller. Glad to have you with us tonight. Corey Evan did not show up for work today, so you just have me tonight. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and get back to that story out of the UK. We believe we've got our technical difficulties fixed on that story, and what we're going to be playing now is some clips from this morning's Prime Minister's questions. This has to do with the recent HSBC donor row that is going on in the UK, and here is what of what happened at this morning's Prime Minister's questions with Labour leader Ed Miliband and Prime Minister David Cameron.
An hour ago we learned that linked to the HSBC tax avoidance scandal are 7 Tory donors, including a former treasurer of the Tory party, who between them have given nearly £5 million to the Conservative Party. How can the Prime Minister explain the revolving door between Tory Party HQ and the Swiss branch of HSBC?
I saw this list just before coming to Prime Minister's questions, and one of the people named is the Labour donor Lord Paul, who funded Gordon Brown's election campaign. I am very clear. People should pay their taxes in our country, and no government has been tougher than this one in chasing down tax evasion and tax avoidance.
Let's talk about the difference between him and me. None of these people have given a penny on my watch, and he's up to his neck in this. Now let's take Stanley Fink, who gave £3 million to the Conservative Party. He actually appointed him as treasurer of the Tory party and gave him a peerage for good measure. So now can he explain what steps he's going to take to find out about the tax avoidance activities of Lord Fink?
I will tell him, Mr. Speaker, about the difference between him and me. When people donate to the Conservative Party, they don't pick the candidates, they don't choose the policies, they don't elect the leader. When the trade unions fund the Labour Party, they pay for the candidates, they pay for the policies, and the only reason he is sitting there is because a bunch of trade union leaders decided he was more left-wing than his brother.
And that was Prime Minister's questions. Reading out a statement outside Conservative's central office, Lord Fink said Mr. Miliband's allegations made under the protection of parliamentary privilege were untrue and defamatory. He said he had opened an HSBC account in Switzerland when he had worked there for 4 years because he needed a local bank account to do the same things like receive my Swiss franc salary and pay grocery bills. He said he chose HSBC because he had already banked with them in the UK. He then accused the Labour Party of playing the man, not the ball, suggesting this had become something of a habit for him. He also challenged Ed Miliband to either repeat his allegations outside the House of Commons or perhaps to withdraw from them publicly. But Labour sources said serious allegations about Lord Fink's complex arrangements to minimize tax have been made in The Guardian, and he had still not justified the reasons why he had made these arrangements. In a separate development, Lord Paul said he had held an account with HSBC for quite some time in Switzerland. There was nothing unsavory about it, he said. He said a Labour donor and peer, but now sits as an independent in the House of Lords. The Guardian newspaper published names of Swiss account holders. It reports the Conservatives have raised more than £5 million from HSBC clients with Swiss accounts. Now time for your market report. The S&P 500 today was at 2,068.53. That means 0% gains from yesterday. The Dow Jones was down 17,862.14 points, which is 0.4%, and the Nasdaq was up today 4,800.18 points, which was up 0.28%. Asian stocks and euro clipped today as markets erred on the side of caution over the ongoing Greek debt negotiations amid conflicting headlines on progress in talks. MCI's broadcast index of Asian Pacific shares outside Japan was down 0.2%. South Korea's Kospi lost 0.2%. Japan's Nikkei bucked the trend and gained 1.6% thanks to significantly weaker yen. CNBC reported late on Wednesday that an agreement in principle was in place between Greece and other Eurozone governments, lifting risk appetite briefly. Luxembourg's finance minister also said his Euro counterparts agreed on a way forward to deal with Greece's financing problems. Still, the situation appears far from clear, with Reuters reporting that there was no deal yet and a Greek government official insisting there could be no extension of the bailout. Investors awaited a European Council meeting later on Thursday to gauge whether in fact debt negotiations were moving forward. The logic of each side's demands negotiating until the very last minute is the only way to ensure the most is achieved. Of course, the nature of the brinkmanship exercise risks a miscalculation that sends both over the abyss, said strategists at Brown Brothers Harem, who wrote in a note to their clients. Risk asset markets also had to keep an eye on geopolitical developments, as we mentioned earlier, as France, Germany, Russia, and Ukraine began peace talks in Belarus. In currencies, the euro had an early dip as the market tried to digest the conflicting Greek headlines, which slipped 0.2% to 1.1311 from a high of 1.1353. The dollar held within striking distance of a 5-week peak at $120.48, reached out on the back of higher U.S. Treasury yields. Meanwhile, today, oil prices fell as much as 3% on Wednesday after U.S. stockpiles hit record highs, and analysts and traders said the market could shed more of a 2-week rebound that was spurred by expectations of lower output. U.S. crude stocks rose by almost 5 billion barrels last week to reach nearly 418 million barrels, the highest since 1982 when records started being kept. Government data showed. Analysts polled by Reuters and ITN had a forecast a build of nearly 4 million barrels. The record inventory was a sign the market was still struggling to find a home for some 2 million barrels per day of oil. The glut has prevented prices from forming a bottom to sell-off that began last summer, according to analysts. It proves that the price retractment we had on the capital expenditure cuts and falling rig counts may have been premature, said Gene McKillen, senior analyst at Tradition Energy in Stamford, Connecticut. Energy firms slashed billions of dollars from their oil exploration budgets, and the number of U.S. oil drilling rigs fell to 3-year lows after crude prices fell by about 60% from their June peaks. On Wednesday, benchmark Brent oil dropped below the 55 per barrel support level, settling down at $1.77 or 3% at $54.06 a barrel. U.S. crude closed down $1.18 or about 2% at $44.84 a barrel. And that's your market report. And we'll be right back after these messages.
Some of America's bravest warriors are returning home wounded. Here's one of them.
My name is Norberto Lara. I served for 11 years in the United States Army. While I was on a combat patrol in Baqaba, Iraq, a rocket-propelled grenade took my arm off at the shoulder. When I came home, I felt alone. My family was around me, but I couldn't talk to them about what I'd seen and what I'd done. I remember just thinking, man, the way I am right now, I don't want to live. I was discharged from the Army, and I've been working with the Wounded Warrior Project since 2007. You don't have to be severely wounded to be with the Wounded Warrior Project. We do have a lot of guys that have post-traumatic stress disorder. Being able to share your story, I guess it kind of helps you wrap your mind around what did happen over there. Just because you have left the military doesn't mean your life is over. Because when these guys are coming home, I'm kind of leading and training them. Instead of for combat, I'm leading and training them to heal. If I come away with anything from Wounded Warrior Project, it's them giving my life back. My name is Norby, and yes, I do suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, but I'm okay.
Don't suffer in silence. Contact woundedwarriorproject.org.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Live from Southern California, this is the Evan-Miller Report. Jason Miller with news and politics, Corey Evan with business and entertainment. This is the Evan-Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio. Here now, Jason Miller.
And welcome back to the Evan-Miller Report. I'm Jason Miller. Corey Evan, don't know where he is tonight, but hopefully he will return back tomorrow. Welcome back to the Evan-Miller Report. Just approaching 8:30 on the east, 5:30 out west, and 7:30 Central Standard Time. Welcome back to the Evan-Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio. Well, folks, we got some other headlines to follow today. Governor Bruce Rayner has stepped up his campaign against government employee unions by taking executive action by eliminating so-called fair share dues paid by workers who don't join a union. For more on the story, we go to WGN-TV Chicago's Micah Mater for more on this story.
A showdown between Governor Bruce Rauner and state employee unions is brewing, and the governor fired the first big shot today. Governor Rauner signing an executive order saying fair share fees paid by some state workers were unconstitutional. Fair share fees are paid by state employees who opt out of joining a union. Rauner says the fees are a violation of First Amendment rights because they go to fund groups the employees do not support or agree with. And the governor expects the issue to be decided by the Supreme Court, and a legal team has already made a filing in federal court.
These forced union dues are a critical cog in the corrupt bargain that is crushing taxpayers. And government union bargaining and government union political activity are inextricably linked.
And here's reaction from the unions. SEIU Local 73 President Christine Boardman said Governor Rauner's executive order today showed his true colors, a man whose top priority is to ruin the lives of working families in Illinois. AFSCME Council 31 Executive Director Roberta Lynch said in part, Bruce Rauner's scheme to strip the rights of state workers and of state workers and weaken their unions by executive order is a blatantly illegal abuse of power.
Three more meetings.
And that was Micah Mater reporting from WGN-TV Chicago on Governor Bruce Rayner using executive order to take away so-called fair share dues on people who don't support the union. All right, folks, staying in Illinois, Little League International has stripped Chicago's Jackie Robinson West of its national title after finding the team falsified its boundary map. The league made the announcement Wednesday morning, saying the Chicago team violated regulations by placing players on the team who didn't qualify because they lived outside the team's boundaries. Little League International also suspended Jackie Robinson West's manager, Darrell Butler, from league activity. A statement from the Little League International says in part, quote, "This is a heartbreaking decision. What these players accomplished on the field and the memories and lessons they have learned during the Little League World Series tournament is something that the kids can be proud of. But it is unfortunate that the actions of adults have led to this outcome." The announcement comes after an investigation that started when a suburban coach alleged that Jackie Robinson West's team violated rules by poaching top players from nearby suburbs. Little League had said in December an investigation into the Chicago team found no violation. Jackie Robinson's West Championship run captured the attention of the nation and turned the all-black team into heroes in their hometown. Mountain Ridge Little League in Las Vegas will be handed the 2014 U.S. Little League World Series Championship instead. An update on a story we brought to you yesterday. Man suspected of shooting CBS News 8 in San Diego's sports director Kyle Kraska surrendered to a SWAT team late last night, which is Tuesday night for those of you listening in on podcast, in El Cajon, California, following an intense manhunt. Mike Montana was then booked into jail on an attempted first-degree murder charge. Kraska is now recovering at a Scripps La Jolla hospital after undergoing surgery. Following the standoff at an El Cajon residence, Montana 54 was wearing jeans, a dark sweatshirt, and a beanie when he surrendered with his hands up to SWAT officers just before 10 p.m. Pacific Standard Time Tuesday night. The home surrounded the suspect's neighborhood were evacuated during the standoff. When neighbors spotted Montana's white Superior painting van in El Cajon Tuesday night, several of them called 911. One neighbor said, quote, "I went straight to the house to knock on the door to confront the owner to say, 'Hey, is this in fact the gentleman that you know you rent a room to?' and let her know, 'Hey, they're looking for him and I'm calling the police.'" Montana was then taken away in handcuffs about 8 hours after police say he ambushed Kraska at his home. The San Diego Police Department received reports of the shooting in the 1200 block of Avinta Court in Scripps Ranch shortly after 3 p.m. Tuesday. When officers arrived on the scene, they found neighbors, including a nurse, giving aid to Mr. Kraska, who was then transported to Scripps La Jolla Hospital in California. According to an officer that accompanied Kraska, he was alert, awake, and responsive during transport. A doctor was then waiting for Kraska at the hospital and rushed him into the ER. Kraska suffered a gunshot wound to his leg and the left side of his stomach. CBS News 8 confirmed Tuesday night that Kraska was out of surgery and his prognosis was good. The incident began when shots were fired into the rear window of Kraska's silver Mercedes-Benz. Then, after pulling out of his driveway, the confrontation spilled into the street in front of Kraska's home. At the time, another round of gunshots were heard. The Evan-Miller Report has a source that has told us tonight that there was a bit of a feud going on between Mr. Montana and Mr. Kraska due to a bad paint job gone wrong. Mr. Montana did not do a good job, so Mr. Kraska did not decide to pay him, according to the source who spoke on condition of anonymity to the Evan-Miller Report today, and said that since Mr. Kraska decided not to pay him, which may be behind why Mr. Montana ended up going after Mr. Kraska yesterday. So, of course, we'll keep you up to date on all the very latest with this story as the developments come available. By the way, we should let you know that Mike Montana will be arraigned in court for the attempted murder of Mr. Kraska on Friday. A man wanted for assault with a deadly weapon was dead of an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound after leading Los Angeles police on a pursuit on surface streets and freeways in the San Fernando Valley on Wednesday here in the state of California. The pursuit of the white Chevrolet pickup truck ended in an hour-long standoff in Arleta. When authorities finally approached the vehicle, they found the driver dead inside. He was a career criminal. He was a gang member, said Los Angeles Police Department Sergeant Frank Prudego. LAPD Gang and Narcotics Division officers had been in Burbank following the driver, who was described only as a Hispanic man in his 40s, when he appeared to see them at about 11:15 a.m. Pacific Standard Time today. The officers identified themselves and drew their weapons, knowing the man to be armed. The suspect looked in the direction of the officers and smiled, and then continued to drive away. Aerial video showed the 2004 work-type truck on surface streets with police in pursuit. The truck got onto the southbound I-5 Interstate 5 freeway, exited at Lincoln Boulevard, and then drove through neighborhoods and then returned to the northbound freeway. The truck then exited in Arleta at about 11:53 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. The driver then stopped in the middle of Terabella Street near Arleta Avenue after appearing to hit a spike strip. At least 11 police vehicles stopped behind him. The motorist appeared to have a small dog on his lap. The driver had not exited the vehicle after about an hour, and a small group of officers approached the truck behind a shield. They saw he had severe injuries, which appeared to be from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. At one point, the dog ran out of the open truck's door and escaped down the street. After 10 minutes or so, officers tried to capture the animal, which momentarily leapt back into the vehicle. The animal was eventually retrieved. A tweet from LAPD stated at about 1:45 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It was not clear if the dog had belonged to the driver. The driver was wanted on a domestic violence-related warrant. About 2 weeks ago, he allegedly pistol-whipped an ex-new partner or boyfriend, leading to an arrest warrant for assault with a deadly weapon. It was not clear if the man was driving his own truck or a company truck. He worked in Burbank. This is the second officer-involved shooting in Los Angeles this week, the previous one happening on Monday night during a car chase that went on many freeways in the city of Los Angeles and the outskirts of Los Angeles, which we covered here on the Evan-Miller Report. All right, ladies and gentlemen, maybe this is the reason why Corey Evan didn't show up tonight, because today, the National Powerball estimated prize is up to $500 million. Will be the largest Powerball jackpot ever. The winner will join a long list of people that Powerball has made very wealthy over the years. Here are the top 5 jackpots in Powerball history and who won them. $590.5 million in May 2013 went to Gloria McKenzie, who claimed the top prize, but it could have easily gone to someone else. $587.5 million back in November 2012 went to a man named Matthew Good, who walked home a winner as well, but didn't want his name to be made public because of public records law. His name was eventually released. Back in 2013, $448.4 million was won by a group of 16 victims of Superstorm Sandy. Dubbed the Ocean 16, they worked for the Ocean County Vehicle Maintenance Facility. The group split the winnings, $86 million, or 1/3 of jackpot's cash option value. Another winner was a project engineer in Minnesota who said he had dreamed of taking home the prize so many times. The third was claimed by a 70-year-old man in New Jersey who played 3 sets of numbers. Number 4, $425.3 million went to Raymond Buxton, who walked into a California lottery office on April 1st wearing a t-shirt that read, "Luck of the Jedi I have." Well, folks, he wasn't kidding. The California retiree said he would use the winnings for charitable causes and travel. And finally, number 5, $399.4 million back in September 2013. Some winners may never come forward publicly, and in some states they don't have to. All we know is that the winning ticket was sold at a Murphy USA gas station in Lexington, South Carolina, and that made someone very wealthy. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and take another short break. When we come back, we have some political news from D.C. tonight, including news here in California about the current race for the governor's seat in 2018. And we'll be right back.
In a moment, cancer changed our lives forever.
We were told nothing could be done to enjoy these final moments together.
But in that moment, when all seemed lost, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital gave us hope.
Because at this moment, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital is saving lives with pioneering research and care. We're changing the way the world treats childhood cancer by sharing our discoveries with doctors and scientists everywhere.
And we'll never have to pay St. Jude for anything, ever.
At this moment, she wants to be in her own bed.
I want to be back at school with my friends. I want to be outside playing.
Please take a moment and join St. Jude in finding cures and saving children. Visit stjude.org.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Let's get back to the Evan-Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio.
And welcome back to the Evan-Miller Report. I'm Jason Miller. Corey Evan, once again, off buying lotto tickets or doing who else knows what tonight, and we hope he returns to the program tomorrow. All right, folks, moving on to some political news tonight, and we start off here in the state of California, where California's Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom announced today that he has opened a fundraising account to run for governor in 2018. In an email to supporters, Newsom said, "Our state is defined by its independent, outspoken spirit. When California sees something we truly believe in, we say so and act accordingly without invasiveness or equivocation." Well, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see. That's a communist liberal. We know what happens here in the state of California when it comes to California politicians giving promises about that. Newsom has long waited to be governor, and the move more than 3 years before the election is an early shot across the bow at other political Democratic candidates. By forming a committee, Newsom can raise up to $28,200 per supporter for both the primary and general elections, meaning he can collect $56,400 per donor. Of course, we'll keep you up to date on the current elections. We know 2018 is a long time away, but we thought you should know, especially the GOP here in California, considering they can never come up with a good candidate these days. Maybe it gives you a little bit more time to find a good candidate, GOP? Just saying. I'm a Californian. I can speak on these matters, ladies and gentlemen. And by the way, if you are a candidate considering running for governor, you can email me, jmiller@shrmedia.com. But I'm sure a lot of people are going to take a while to think about that one before they want to get embroiled in Sacramento politics. Trust me, I've had to live here pretty much all my life, ladies and gentlemen. Sacramento politics sometimes have never changed. All right, moving on to some national news out of D.C. Following years of legislative tussies, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm using the word tussies, Congress was set Wednesday to greenlight the Keystone XL pipeline transport Canadian oil to U.S. refineries, but President Obama is pledging to veto the measure. The House of Representatives was expected to give Congress its final seal of approval on a bill authorizing construction of the controversial project for which permits were sought 6 years ago. The pipeline stalled as it ran into criticism from environmentalists as well as approval delays by the Obama administration. After numerous Republican attempts to force Obama's hand on the project, the Senate passed its version of the bill last month with bipartisan support. The House, which advanced Keystone through procedural votes Wednesday, is widely expected to follow suit. Senate Majority Leader and BS artist Mitch McConnell hailed the bill as a common-sense measure that would pump millions of dollars into the economy. Should the bill become law, it would override the extended review process and ramp through authorization, allowing builder TransCanada to get to work on the 1,179-mile or 1,900-kilometer pipeline that Republicans insist is a job generator that will boost U.S. energy security. But the White House has threatened a veto out of environmental concerns and a wish for the review process to play out, a move some Republicans will no doubt use to bolster their argument ahead of the 2016 presidential race that Obama is blocking crucial job-creating incentives. The president has been pretty clear that he does not think circumventing a well-established process or evaluating these projects is the right thing for Congress. White House spokesman and BS artist Josh Earnest said back in January the veto would be the third of Obama's presidency and by far the most significant, at least, to Republicans. Overcoming the veto would require a 2/3 majority in Congress, as an especially heavily lift the 100-member Senate, where Republicans hold 54 seats and will need 13 Democrats to cross over to join them. 9 Senate Democrats have backed Keystone last month, with Keystone likely in limbo even after congressional passage. House Speaker John Boehner reiterated his charge that Obama was hindering job creation, saying, quote, "The president is standing with a bunch of left-fringe extremists and archists," Boehner told reporters. Well, ladies and gentlemen, all I gotta say to John Boehner is, you know what, you can tell the Democrats all you want and Obama all you want, they stand and off to the side, but yet look at you guys, you're standing to the side as well, not getting anything done. So, wait before you speak, Mr. Boehner, because you're no better than the other side of the aisle at this point. And that's this newsman's editorial opinion for the network on this story. All right, folks, another big story we're following today. American sniper Chris Kyle described his killer as nuts in a text to a friend moments before they were both shot dead by a former Marine, a court was told. Defense lawyers for Eddie Ray Roth claimed the 27-year-old was psychotic at the time of the shooting. This happening today as the trial of the American sniper began today. Also, as the film American Sniper has been nominated for 6 Oscars. The former Navy SEAL, who has the most recorded kills of any sniper, was shot and killed along with his friend Chad Littlefield at a rural shooting range southwest of Fort Worth. Having retired from the military, he'd been helping other veterans deal with combat-related stress and mental health issues. During opening statements today, defense lawyer Tim Moore argued Mr. Roth had taken to the hospital several times previously for mental health issues and had been diagnosed, and have been diagnosed as a psychotic. His level of psychosis was so high the day of shooting, Kyle and Littlefield became alarmed, Mr. Moore said. He read to jurors text that he said the two men exchanged while driving with the former Marine to the shooting range. The dude is straight up nuts, Kyle texted to Littlefield as Mr. Ross sat behind them in the vehicle. He's saying, right behind me, watch my 6, Littlefield texted back, using a military reference for watching one's back. Mr. Moore told jurors that Mr. Roth, who suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, was under extreme mental distress and was convinced the two men would turn on him. He thought he had to take their lives or he was in danger. The court also heard Mr. Roth was under the influence of marijuana and alcohol at the time of the shooting. And we'll keep an up-to-date on this current trial and give you updates as they become available. All right, final piece of D.C. news to wrap it up tonight here to D.C. before we get on some other stories tonight. Speaker John Boehner, MBS artist, reiterated today that the House of Representatives will not pass another bill to fund the Department of Homeland Security at this time, despite its standoff with the Republican-controlled Senate. Boehner's comment that the House had done its job and it's time for the Senate to act came in a closed Republican conference meeting Wednesday morning. Senators Cory Gardner of Colorado and Shelley Moore, Capito of West Virginia, both former House members, discussed immigration and the 60-vote threshold. The Senate Republican leaders, including Majority Leader and BS artist Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, have said the House needs to take up the bill. The Senate has been unable to pass the DHS funding bill because it's loaded with provisions to gut President Obama's changes and executive actions to immigration law. All right, folks. It's time for a little segment here on the program. Since Corey is not here today, we're going to be doing a little bit of oddball news. A Belarusian delegate at the United Nations Disarmament Forum warned fellow diplomats about an unusual type of weapon. Jars of mayonnaise being thrown by a topless woman during discussions about war and peace. The delegate issued a statement of concern during the Geneva-based UN Conference on Disarmament's discussion on Tuesday about improving its transparency. Belarus asked whether there was a plan to open up the meeting to members of the general public. According to the official record of the session, the delegate said such a policy could create difficulties for security and support staff. What if there were topless ladies screaming from the public gallery, throwing bottles of mayonnaise? Asked Belarus, the official summary said. The record also added that the president of the Conference on Disarmament, a diplomat from Mexico, replied that members of the public were already entitled to attend plenary meetings of the conference and sit in the public gallery, and so in theory could already drop mayonnaise onto the delegates. The Mexican delegate said it was unlikely the gallery would never ever be flooded with thousands of people, knowing there were only 2 people in the public gallery during Tuesday's meeting. And ladies and gentlemen, I gotta say, I had mayonnaise in my tuna salad with my Dijon mustard this morning, and it was awesome. Moving on tonight. Well, one hell of a traffic jam. This had to do with a large truck towing an even bigger boat that had broken down in downtown Boston, snarling traffic in the heart of the city's bustling financial district. According to television station WCVB, the 36-foot yacht Maggie May was being hauled Wednesday to the Boston Convention and Exhibition Center for this weekend's New England Boat Show when the truck stalled. Boston's narrow streets are tighter than usual because of the heavy snow accumulation over the past 2 weeks. Workers eventually got the truck and boat out of the congested neighborhood, but without causing a bit of congestion in rush hour. Call that a blizzard of a snarl, don't you think, ladies and gentlemen? All right, moving on to Nevada. A Nevada man has been arrested on allegations that he shot another man in a bizarre road rage incident that ended with the victim driving himself to the hospital in the suspect's pickup. Sparks police say a 20-year-old Cesar Romero had been booked on several charges, including assault with a deadly weapon. Witnesses told police the victim was driving an Audi on Tuesday morning where Romero allegedly ran him off a suburban street in a Toyota pickup truck. Police say the Romero then shot the man in the chest. They say the victim eventually wrestled the gun away from Romero and struck him in the head with a baseball bat before taking Romero's truck and driving himself to the hospital. Neither man suffered life-threatening injuries. Romero fled on foot but soon was apprehended. Police say they found a handgun in his truck. Talk about an oddball road rage incident. Who would take the person that they heard over to the hospital? That's why it's part of oddball news. And remember that weird zombie cat that came back from the dead? Well, the Florida cat that crawled out of its grave after a traffic accident is now ensnared in a legal dispute over custody involving its owner and the Humane Society of Tampa Bay. Bart the cat, nicknamed the Zombie Cat on social media, made international headlines last month when he surfaced 5 days after he was hit by a car and then buried for dead. He was initially expected to return home after surgery at the Humane Society's veterinarian clinic, where Bart was being treated for a broken jaw and facial injuries. One of his eyes had to be removed. But the agency, which is chronicling Bart's recovery online in a blog, decided not to return the cat to its owner after learning more about the circumstances leading up to its burial, the agency said. Bart's owner, Ellis Hudson of Tampa, filed a court motion earlier this week to demand the return of the black and white pet. Hudson claimed the society's leadership sought to use Bart for fundraising, according to court filings proved to Reuters and ITM by the Humane Society. The motion said Bart's owner was not being allowed to visit the feline nor receiving updates about his condition. Hudson could not immediately be reached for comment. The Humane Society disclosed the legal action on its website and said it is reviewing legal options. Bart remains in the agency's care as of today. Talk about a simple black and white cat causing so much legal trouble. Who would have ever thought that would have happened? That's why it's oddball news, ladies and gentlemen. All right, and finally, to wrap up tonight's oddball news, it's Paws Up, Varmint! Police in Snow Swamp, New Hampshire are hunting for public enemy number 1. The suspect, though, is not human. He is short and furry with brown eyes and big pointy teeth. Looking to lighten up the mood after a series of snowstorms, Merrimack Police posted a gag on their Facebook page asking the public to rat out Persley Phil, the Pennsylvania groundhog who last week predicted 6 more weeks of winter. We have received several complaints from the public that this little varmint is held up in a hole, warm and toasty, said the posting that was accompanied by an image of the mischievous groundhog from the movie Caddyshack. He told several people that winter would last 6 more weeks, however he failed to disclose that it will consist of mountains of snow. Police Chief Mark Doyle said the idea came during a conversation with Lieutenant Denise Roy as they shook their heads over 3 major snowstorms that thumped the New England area since January 27th. We were chatted about how sick and tired we were, and she came up with the idea, Doyle said. Everybody is looking at what it is for a tongue-in-cheek, light-hearted look at the winter we're having in the Northeast. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you catch that little scampy varmint there, turn him into the New Hampshire Police Department. You'd be doing yourself a favor, and you might end up on Jimmy Kimmel. Who knows? Just saying, ladies and gentlemen. All right, folks, we're running short on time tonight, so the entertainment segment tonight, we're going to be playing a little clip. The Family Feud has been known to host several funny moments over the decades, But one recent contestant may have taken the cake for one of the most bizarre and hilarious responses yet. In a video uploaded to Family Food's YouTube channel on February 9th, host Steve Harvey requests two contestants named Darcy and Manny to name something a doctor might pull out of a person. Darcy's response is hilarious, and we're going to go ahead and play it now here on the Evan-Miller Report.
Point values are double. We got top 7 answers on the board. Name something a doctor might pull out of a person. Darcy.
A gerbil. I didn't say that. I've heard about something like that once.
Yes, you said it. You said it. You said it. Let me just write out like that.
That's awesome.
First thing you can come up with is bam, gerbil. Just like that. First answer. Oh, no pressure. Bam, gerbil. Just like that. Pull it out. I've heard of this. Hey, over here. Gerbil. Gerbil. Name something a doctor might pull out of a person. Bam, gerbil.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, she not only got only made a laugh, but she also got the question wrong. Manny ended up getting the next question, which ended up winning that particular round in Family Feud. And ladies and gentlemen, on that note, that is the Evan-Miller Report for this Wednesday, February the 11th, 2015. I'm Jason Miller, and for wherever Corey Evan is, we wish you a good night, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Good night, everybody.